Well, good evening, and welcome to another presentation by the Halia Diet. This is an exciting presentation on raw foods, which is such an important topic to a plant-based diet. And we're so glad that you've joined us this evening. We have a great audience and a fantastic speaker in Dr. Donaldson this evening. So we look forward to sharing with you. I'm Paul Malcolm, President and CEO of Halia Diet, and it's my pleasure to be able to host these on a monthly basis. Before we get started, though, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. First off, if you have any questions or comments through the presentation, feel free to ask your questions down in the lower left-hand side of your screen in that chat window. And we won't answer the question during the Dr. Donaldson's presentations, but we will do a question and answer session at the end. So we look forward to having you with us. We also have a free Barley Max giveaway this evening, and so three people at the end will be selected for the winner of a 2-month supply of Barley Max. So stick with us till the end, and hopefully you'll be one of those lucky winners. Before we get started, let me go ahead and have a word of prayer, and we'll just ask the Lord's blessing on the evening. Dear Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity to be here this evening and to bring this information, to have Dr. Donaldson with us, but also all the participants, Lord. We pray that all the technology will go smoothly and that Dr. Donaldson will be able to share the information and people will be able to receive it. Pray that we honor you through this and that people are helped. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, Dr. Donaldson's been with Halia Diet since 1998. He's been foundational in not only the product research, but also in validating the accuracy of the information that we shared and the validity of the Halia Diet. So he's been really foundational in a lot of what we've done. He's been published in, I believe, like a dozen peer-review articles and done numerous studies, and he's got a lot of great information that he wants to share with us this evening. So I'll just go ahead and turn it over to you, Dr. Donaldson, and look forward to hearing what you have to say this evening.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. It's glad to be with you all here and to be able to share this information. We've been working on this project, not just this particular project with the Raw Food Lab here for more than a year. I think it's been a couple of years really going at it here. And so what you're getting tonight is kind of maybe a fire hose kind of treatment of what we've put together. You probably won't absorb all of this tonight, in fact. So you'll probably want to go back and look at the numbers and really think through the implications of what it is that we've shared with you tonight. So there's two parts to this, why raw foods are such a critical staple of a plant-based diet. The first part is really getting a historical perspective on the raw food movement. And the second part is will be testing that we've done, you know, how we test and the test results that we've done of different raw food powders here. And it's not just self-promotion here, really. We've brought in all kinds of stuff and compared it with what we produce and share the results freely with you. So first of all, we're going to go into the historical perspective here. And if we go back, why are raw foods important? And it's been documented, and people have kind of discovered it on their own, independently of each other, one after another, after another, after another, and it just keeps going on like that. Professor Werner Koloth, working before World War I, he was working with lab animals, and that was back in the day when they're trying to figure out what vitamins were essential, what minerals were key, and it had to be there in a diet. And he found out he can keep these animals alive on pretty much nothing. You just gave them a purified processed diet. For minerals, it had a little bit of zinc and potassium phosphate. And for vitamins, it just had thiamine. That was it. And he was astonished because these animals didn't look that sick. They looked pretty healthy as they were growing. However, as they aged, they contracted dental cavities, constipation, imbalance of bacteria in the colon. The bones were very low in minerals. And when they died, they opened them up and did autopsy on these animals, and they had internal organs that looked like people that had suffering from degenerative diseases. They had disease all over the place inside of them, basically. So they looked okay on the outside, and that's what he termed mesotrophy, medium health. It's not really unhealthy outside, but inside there's disease just knocking at the door. So that was interesting enough to create deficiencies. Now, what did it take to regain health in those animals? Well, he couldn't do it with the different vitamins and minerals that they were discovering in those days. That didn't work. Not just any single ones, not combinations of them either. He found what really worked for these young animals, if you gave it soon enough, was plenty of fresh, raw foods. Green leafy stuff, cereal germs, vegetables. It had to be raw stuff that helped those animals recover. So he's one of those pioneers that kind of stumbled on the truth there. A lot of these physicians and early doctors working at that time discovered through their own bad health what it was that it took to become healthy themselves. Max Bircher-Benner, when he was a young physician, was struck down with jaundice and really wasn't able to eat much, just kind of laying around. And I don't know what the root of that was exactly. The account that I saw didn't explain what the disease was really all about. But he couldn't eat much. And one day his wife was peeling apples and she kind of slipped him a piece. And he said, well, that kind of agreed with him. He didn't get more sick. So he kept on eating the apple. And then, several days later and quite a few more apples later, he recovered his health, just like that. The apples worked for him. And that's kind of odd. And he hesitatingly applied some of that knowledge to other patients. He gave a woman in deathbed mashed raw fruit, raw honey, raw goat's milk. She recovered. Whereas she couldn't tolerate those things if they had been cooked. So he went on to found a clinic in Zurich, Switzerland that helped people for many, many years. It just closed in not too distant past here. It's been closed now. But for many, many years, he helped people, and the use of the raw, unfired foods, that was the foundation for his holistic treatment, for the successes that they had there. Another doctor is Max Gerson. Before World War II, he did escape from Germany, managed to migrate to the U.S. But when he was a young doctor, he had these intense migraines, just laid him out. And so he asked, his doctor friends, what do I do? He said, well, just wait till you're 50, it'll pass. When you're, just barely 25, that's not a very good answer. So he was more pragmatic than just waiting until he was 50. So he tried out a milk diet. It felt worse, because he thought, well, babies drink milk, so it ought to be good for you. Didn't work. He tried, thought, well, monkeys are somewhat related to us, being primates. So he tried that. Try eating things that monkeys ate. And that helped him. The migraines went away. And then he could easily figure out what was good and bad for him, because if you made a dietary misstep, it was a migraine headache. Now, that would probably keep you on the straight and narrow, wouldn't it? I think it would me, too. Well, he ended up helping some other people, too. He tried someone else that had migraines. So, well, this worked for me. You ought to try it. And it did, but it also cured the guy's skin lupus. And then he shared it with Albert Schweitzer's wife for her tuberculosis. And this migraine diet helped her tuberculosis. And on. He found out that, this is way more than just a cure for just what I have. In fact, it's foundational for health. He went on to become famous for helping people with cancer. Went and presented cases to the U.S. Senate in 1948. They didn't listen to him. And as a result, he was thrown out of the country eventually. And there's a clinic carrying his name, and Charlotte Gerson has carried on his legacy there at the Gerson Institute down in Mexico. But there it was. He just kind of stumbled upon it himself. And other people have stumbled on it too. Norman Walker, just as a young man, from England, was in Europe and working really hard, came down with a nervous breakdown, saw a doctor. Doctor recommended him. He'd just go find someone out in France and just live with them for a while and eat out of their garden. Well, he did that. He found a farmer to live with, and they shared what they had in their garden with him. And he found out he could recover faster if he took some of those carrots from the garden, put them through a grater, through a cheesecloth, and squeezed some juice out of them. The doctor expected his recovery to take several months. And just a matter of mere weeks, he was all better. Went on, with this carrot juice kick, and he never really quit that. He found that the raw vegetable juice was really very helpful for vibrant health. And he would taught other things, that the disease begins in the colon. That's where disease really starts. If you keep your intestinal tract healthy, then the rest of you is going to be healthy too. And of course, he went a long ways from just grating carrots and shredding them and squeezing them through cheesecloth. But that was the beginning of his idea for the Norwalk juicer, which is still a very good juicer today. There's other people. We can turn our attention to Anne Wigmore. She, as a little daughter, as a little girl, saw her grandma heal people with natural means during World War I. Soldiers from both sides, where she was, they come both ways. And her grandma would fix them up, and she was busy just taking care of the cattle and being very quiet sometimes, but she saw that. As a young woman, she had the opportunity to move to the U.S., to migrate. She lived with an uncle that didn't care for her very much at all. So when she had an accident, and he just kind of gave up on her, just as soon as she went away, really. So she didn't have much hope or help there with the relatives that she was with, and she remembered what her grandma had told her and what her grandma had done, and the healing that there was in the fresh things. So she started eating grass, even flowers, and the gangrene cleared up, her legs healed, to the amazement of everyone around her. And she went and was looking for the best kind of grass that would help people. And she settled on sorrel grass. It grew fast, it was vibrant, very healthy, strong, very dark green, and wheatgrass in particular. She was able to do that. It was commonly easy to get wheat berries to grow the wheatgrass from. And she spent many years there helping people in Boston with their wheatgrass therapy and other raw foods as well. It wasn't just the wheatgrass by itself, but the whole living foods along with it. So she kind of stumbled upon it herself as well. And we come up to more modern days with Reverend George Malcolmus. Back in the height of his pastoral ministry, just 42, he was told he had colon cancer. Well, he'd seen his mother succumb to the colon cancer, and maybe more accurately, its treatments of the cancer as well. And he'd been told that, if you get sick, you go to the doctor and do whatever he says. And that's what his mom did, and he said, I'm not going to do that. So he broke programming. Called Brother Lester Roloff and asked him, Brother, what should I do? He says, go back to the Genesis 1:29 diet and drink lots of carrot juice. Lots of carrot juice. So he did that. He did that for a full year, just all raw diet. Within a year, his tumor was gone. The rest of his physical ailments also went away. So he gained vibrant health. And he learned that by experience the healing power of the living foods that invoke that self-healing mechanism that God has designed into the living bodies that we occupy. And that discovery led him to the founding of Hallelujah Acres and the propagation of this health message to me, to you, to many others as well. And he would say it like this: we need to realize that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, that we are comprised of living cells that were designed by God to be nourished with living food. And it's just stated that appears to be just a physical law that's just as sure as gravity is. We can complain about it, we may not like it, but that's the way it is. Living cells do require some living nutrition to thrive. You can get along with that methyl-trophy for many years, and you may seem to be healthy, but it comes and gets you. Eventually it does. And it didn't, the healing didn't stop with just Reverend Malcolmus. Many people have over the years seen that. In the archives of the Back to the Garden articles, these magazines that we put out for quite a few years, over the years, the different covers, you can see what is, kind of changed over the years from the early years to later on in full color, just full color to the health news. Over the years, there's been feature articles in every one of these, and some pretty in-depth stories of all these different people who have experienced healing using raw foods to recover, using the raw vegetable juices, raw foods as the principal factor. I'm sure they felt better and they started to exercise and so on, but without the raw foods, they wouldn't have had the energy and the recovery ability to exercise either. So you had to have the raw foods as part of it there. So there's many of those stories there. You can go read those stories in the archives. I encourage you to do that. Bookmark that spot. Go back and read those stories, because they're not just little snippets. They're full articles. You can have an idea of what these people were struggling with and how they overcame. So if we kind of wrap that up a little bit, it says, why do the raw foods work? Well, the bottom line is that they really do work. That's why they're central, because they work. Time and time again, everyone that tries it finds that, well, they do feel better. It does help them heal faster. and the body responds to the raw living foods. You know, we can argue for a while about, well, what is it? Is it the biophotons? Is it the enzymes? Is it some kind of structure thing? Is it negative entropy that you're eating? You know, higher vibrational energy that you're consuming with it, the foods that your body absorbs? And maybe it's some of all of those things. But the bottom line is that the raw living plant foods is what our bodies thrive on. It's what we were originally given in Genesis 1:29. The fruits, the nuts, the vegetables. Those were the original diet. So when we stray from that, you know, even making amends for different circumstances that we have today, but we stray a long ways from that, and we pay the price for unhealthiness. We're not going to have vibrant health if we don't pay attention to Genesis 1:29. I'm just going to eat whatever. Just cook it all and consume it. Doesn't matter if it came from plant or animal. Doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. And here are the stories, you know, from pioneers and many others. Maybe you too have a story of how the raw foods have been helpful to you. You know, through the years, there hasn't been a whole lot of money in the early years because, you know, you didn't make much money making wheatgrass juice. And you didn't make much money telling people to eat more raw foods. Along the way, people found that if they took a powder, if they took a juice and they turned it into a powder, there's some benefits to it, right? And there's a lot of those powders now. Well, there's some advantages to those powders. They do have longer shelf life. You can put them in a bottle, and they're not going to spoil next week like a juice would. So they're convenient to take with you when you travel. There's really no preparation. You can eat it dry in a spoon. You can mix it in water or put it in a smoothie. It's easy to do. And there's some things you can find in some of these juice powders that you just can't go to the grocery store and find. It's a little easier to find some of these things now, but you know, you can put a wide selection of things in a jar economically in a way that you couldn't do it at a grocery store. So a living juice powder is great. There's a question though. And the question is this: is that powder in that jar really raw? Is it really a living food? Because if you want the results that we're talking about, that all these pioneers found with raw living foods, that all these people with the testimonies have found with raw living foods, if your powder's not raw and still have enzymatic activity in it, then it's not going to help you the way you hope it would. So we've put together some testing here, and we've looked at a bunch of different powders and really asked the question, is this juice powder raw? Now here's a spectrum of things that we've tested up against here. So if you can, you know, you have to open up your screen, full screen there to see it all, but you can read across all those different labels here. You know, from everything from the Health Force superfoods here, greener grasses alkalizer, there's just some standard barley grass powder, some dehydrated barley grass juice powder, our Barley Max powders, there's Nature's Ways barley grass, Vitacost has a couple different things here, barley green from, you know, Hagiwara, goes way back with that one. Pines has been a good company for many years. There's Juvo raw green grass. You know, most of these claim that they're raw, they're good for you, unprocessed. You look here, amazing grasses, barley grass, wheatgrass, alfalfa together. It sounds like a good product. Looks good, it's got a nice label. Sells well on Amazon. Keel green, it's one of the first ones I ever saw. Here's some, what's this one here? From Pure Plant, just barley, it's called. A whole bunch of different products here. How do you know if this is raw or not? You can't really go by the label. That's the thing. It might tell the truth on the label, and it might not. You can't go by the smell. You can't go by the taste. You know, some of these freeze-dried powders, they actually taste better than the raw powders, believe it or not. Some of the carrot juice powders, though, this one tastes so great, but it's not. It's not a living raw food powder. Sometimes I think the producers don't know if their product is raw either. They're just going by some of the information that their producer that they bought it from has told them. So they don't know if it's raw or not. Or maybe they do know and they're deceiving the public. Well, what we have here is the gold standard for testing. If I test it and find that it has enzymatic activity in it, then it's still a raw food. And if I don't find enzyme activity in it, then it really is a dead food. So this testing, it's not that complicated. So it's easy for someone else to repeat. I'll share the protocols with you. You can try it yourself. You can show you can find the same things that I found. It's not a secret, in a sense. We've put it together, but other people can replicate this as well. So just for a couple minutes, I want to take you inside the lab with some photos here and just show you the process, just demystify it a little bit here of how we do this testing here. So first off, we just take apart, say in this case it's a barley max, weigh out some powder on the scale. So we just weigh out the right amount here, mix it in the water, mix it together so it's well mixed. You let it sit for a little bit. Dispense out all the buffers into the 96 well plate so we can do a lot of testing at one time. Then I put the sample in all the different wells for here. Some are for control wells that don't have the testing going on. It's just a control well for color, and some that do have the substrate added to them. So you fill up the plate, you load all your samples in it, then incubate it at 37 degrees. Put it in the water bath there, let it sit there, and the testing can go on right in the water there. At that point, you add the substrate at a very particular time. So these are all timed assays here, and you watch that reaction. Now, some of these you can't see any color change until you're done with the reaction, so you have to know about how long they need to progress. So at the end of the timing, you add the stop buffer, and it changes the pH, and the reaction's over at that point. And you can see the yellowish greenish color showing up there. And if you do a well a second, and you'll see across all the reactions there, you can see all the yellow showing up there. And that's what we're going to measure, is the yellow color, how intense that yellow color is. So you can't measure it that when we spin down the debris in a centrifuge, and then we take that, transfer that to a clear plate. Instead of taking it out of this reaction plate here, put it into this clear 96 well plate, then we put it into a plate reader, a spectrophotometer, and that will read those right there. You put it in there, and it reads 8 wells at a time. So you get that reading there at 410 nanometers. Get across, you get your absorbances, do your calculation, and get your results here. This happened to be barley max, so this was for alkaline phosphatase, and all 7 of these samples were barley max. So you see a little bit of variation in the results there. It went from 44 up to 57 there. So some variation across the board there. But that's the idea. It just runs it through. You can do a whole bunch of samples all at once and get some good data here. So that's just kind of what it looks like in the laboratory, the flow of data there. Not real complicated. Lots of people can do it. There's different results we want to look at here. The first section of results are for barley grass juice and leaf powders. Kind of lump those all together. They're all having to do with barley grass. Then we'll talk about almonds and almond butter here, and then blenders versus juices, and then some bottled juices. We'll look at those as well. So hang on to your hat here, because here we go. Okay, so we've tested 6 enzymes for 22 different products here. And then we rank them according to enzyme activity here. So here are the results here from, these are ranked for the 6 different assays: beta-galactosidase, beta-glucosidase, alpha-mannose, acid phosphatase, leucine aminopeptidase, and N-acetyl beta-D glucosaminidase. So here's the 22 products. I won't tell you the names of all of those. You can read all of those. The highest ranking enzyme activity is in bold here. You see across here. And then we take those and rank the rest of those in a percent compared to this highest one here. So you have barley max is highest there. This raw green grass is actually a pretty good product here. It ranks right up there with barley max. And you see down further here, the just barley, and it goes down from there. Well, let's look at the ranking page, and you can see this ranking here. And I put the first 5 over here together. 3 of those happen to be barley max, by the way. One is just barley, which is, the processing of just barley is not that different from the barley max, really. The raw green grass, I don't know exactly where that comes from, but I suspect it's not very far from barley max either. It's a good product. Not necessarily cheaper than barley max, but it's a good product. So those 5 are very well processed. Those have high enzymatic activity in those. These other ones, this Earth Circle Organics, the Vitacost one, Green Foods, the Green Magma, Now Foods, this Now stuff, and the Vitacost stuff actually tastes and looks a lot like Green Magma. So, I don't know that it's exactly the same thing, but it's very similar. Barley Life is in them. It's one of those compromised products. It doesn't have near as much enzyme activity as the other ones do. And the Barley Green, it's right down in there. These this Alka Green for motor supplements, this has a tiny bit of juice powder in it. That's what gives it a little bit of life in there. Without that juice powder, it would be down with the rest of them. These ones down here that are all ranked in the red here, from 15 to 22, these are all grass leaf products, whole leaf powders. They're not juice powders. So that's one of the big distinctions here. All of these things that are made with the whole leaf powder have all been heated. There's no enzyme activity hardly at all, just a mere few percent in all these. Even this amazing trio is great marketing and stuff, but it's a dead grass product. You might as well eat hay, okay? Because that's about what it is. You dry the grass out, and really what you have with the leaf products is you have nutrition locked inside the cells. The cells hasn't been ruptured, so when you go to eat those, you're not going to get the nutrition out of it. It's still locked up in the cell, and your body doesn't digest those plant cells. So here, if we talk about these, there's a few very good products that are very carefully produced. But there's quite a few compromised products too. They'll say they're raw, they'll say they're great, living nutrition, and they're really not. They're second class. And then you have these third class products that really, they're not in the same league at all. They're not a premium product. You may look and say, well, it's cheaper, let's try this one this month. But you're getting what you pay for. Really, you're just, that's what it is. It's not very good. They're not a living product here. So I have a survey question for you coming up here. How about almonds? We're going to talk about almonds next. Are pasteurized almonds raw and enzymatically active? What do you think? Just go ahead and fill that on, and we'll look at the responses here. As you're looking at it, some people say yes, but a whole bunch of you say, well, no way, they're not. So if we look at the results here, you say, well, these pasteurized almonds, they're not raw. They're not enzymatically active and pasteurized. Okay, how could they be raw? Well, how do you know? Have you tested them? I have. So that's the next part here. We get to give you the test results here. But one more question. How about raw almond butter? Is raw almond butter actually raw and enzymatically active? What do you think about this one? There's two almond products. Ah. I thought that might be the perception here. If we look at the results here, most of you say, 70% of you are saying that raw almond butter in the jar is actually raw and enzymatically active. All right, so let's go on to the results here of what we found. This is fun. This is kind of fun here. So here's results for almond butter. Different products, Woodstock raw almond butter. This is a sample of whole almonds. They're a composite sample, just for comparison. Need some kind of standard to judge them against. This is Jive raw sprouted almond butter. Here's Tree of Life organic raw almond butter, and their natural raw almond butter, and Maranatha raw almond butter. Okay. So I tested these 6 enzymes and then averaged out the testing compared to the ones with the highest enzyme content, like I did for the barley products. So the almonds, yeah, they're raw. Jive raw sprouted almond butter, it's a little bit different. It doesn't really taste the same as the other almond butters. But the other ones, they've been heated in the jar. Okay, those are not raw food products. Sorry to disappoint you. 7% of you said they were raw, and they're not. They're not raw almond butter in the jar. What that label means is that they started with raw almonds. They didn't start that almond butter with roasted almonds. They started with the raw almonds. That's all that label really says. It says, we started with raw almonds, we made this almond butter, and we had to heat it to preserve it in the jar. That's why it lasts so long. I still have some of this sitting in my fridge, and it's still good. It hasn't rotted. And, this testing, I didn't do this yesterday. I think this testing may have been almost a year ago. And that raw almond butter, raw, quote, almond butter, is still in my fridge, and it's still, you can still eat it. It's a bit hard, but you can still eat it. So, how about the almonds? Most of you say those pasteurized almonds are not raw. Well, here's some comparison. Here's an almond milk you can buy off the shelf. It didn't have any enzyme activity in it. Here's some raw almonds that I got from Costco, pasteurized almonds from California. Hey, those are raw. I got some from unpasteurized ones from Spain, 2 different lots from 2 different companies. Those are raw almonds. Here's some steam pasteurized ones from California. Not chemical pasteurized, but steam pasteurized. Those are raw too. These almonds you buy in the store, they'll sprout. They have enzyme activity in them. Those are a raw food. It's funny, the things that you thought were raw in the jar, the raw almond butter, not raw. The things you thought were pasteurized and dead, those are raw. You have to do the testing, and you have to pay attention to really what the results are here. You know, this is the gold standard, the enzyme testing, to reveal what's really raw here and what's going on here. So let's go on to the next part. How about blenders? You know, blenders versus juicers. And, you know, Ann Malcolmus did a great webinar last month. If you haven't heard that one, you should go back and listen to it. You know, the benefits of juicing and what it does for you. There's benefits to blenders too. You know, the smoothies you can make with those. But the high speed, you know, air being vortexed into it, people have concerns about that. So what do you think? Do blenders cause a reduction in enzyme activity? All that vortexing? Now you may be thinking this is a trick question this time. But what do you think? What have you been told? What from your own research and reading, what have you found yourself? So the answers are coming in. And if we look at the results here, it looks like about 2/3 of you almost say that the blenders cause a reduction in enzyme activity. And about, well, a little bit more than 1/3, but not as many as a half think, well, no, they're okay. We're fine here. So we've done some testing on this too. Okay, because we want to know, are these blenders good for your food, or should you just juice your produce? So the first part here, we took apples, oranges, carrots, kale, different categories, some hard, some soft. Looked at those 3 different kinds of blenders, 4 juicers. Repeated everything 3 times for these tests here. And we looked at the amount of produce. We didn't just look at how much is produced, because you had to dilute stuff to make it in the blender. You can't put carrots and blend it up and drink it out of a blender. You have to add water, about 50% water, in fact, to make it work. Kale is about 3 times as much water as kale to get that stuff to blend. But it will blend, and you can test the enzymes in those. So we look at those different things, apples, oranges, carrots, and kale, to see what really works there. So carrot juice. If I look at how much the blenders, here's the 3 different blenders, and I don't have to name which brands they are and stuff, because the results are pretty similar across the board. And 4 different juicers here, and then a pasteurized carrot juice. This is just, you know, a bottled pasteurized carrot juice off the shelf there. Nothing in it, by the way. You know, they do pretty good. These blenders don't lose any enzyme activity compared to the juicers here. And the juicers do pretty good at extracting enzyme activity. Yeah, it's pretty even here. You know, one or the other, doesn't matter which way you do it. Okay? Carrots are great. Look at the results for apple juice here. Same kind of thing. We had to, in the blenders, it's 1 part apple and 1 part water to blend them, to process it, but you take that into account when you measure the enzymes. So these juicers are struggling a little bit to get all the enzymes out of it that you get with a blender. Okay? And this isn't measuring any enzyme that's in the fiber, because I have to take the fiber out to even measure enzymes anyways. So this is the enzymes that are loose in the liquids that you can absorb and get benefits out of. Okay? Turns out there's still enzymes going out in your fiber with the juicer. Okay? So you're losing some stuff there. And pasteurized stuff, I mean, it had a little bit of a couple enzymes. But essentially, it's dead. You can't buy pasteurized apple juice that has something in it. Okay? Then we go on and look at the orange juice here. Okay? Almost twice as much enzymes found in the orange juice with the blenders than you find in the juicers here. We have the same thing going on here. You can't squeeze everything out of an orange, and some of the enzymes stay in the fiber. Okay? You don't get them out there. You don't squeeze that out. And none of this was the angel juicer that we talked about last week, or last month, in the webinar there. So you might get a little bit more, but I suspect you're not going to get up to where the blenders are up here. Okay? It's just, you're going to lose some in there any way you do it there. How about kale? How does it do for kale here? Again, the blenders, you get most everything out of those that you can. And you get about 2/3 as much with the juicers. Not too bad. You get pretty good extraction. But not as much as you do with a blender. The blender, turns out, if you look at the pulp out of a blender and out of a juicer, the blender pulverizes something way finer than what you get out of a juicer. Okay? It's going to pulverize it. You actually get better mixing, better extraction in some ways. So, you know, we didn't find here that the blenders reduced enzyme activity at all. Okay? The blenders actually consistently deliver more enzymes for soft things, or like even leafy greens like kale. You know, it did well here. So if you take a pound of produce and want to get the most enzymes out of them, you blenderize them. Okay? You put them in a blender, you'll get more enzymes out of them. That is, if your digestive system is strong and you can handle the fiber, and you don't need too much of it, because you can't drink a lot of those smoothies with all that fiber. Whereas on the Halia diet, if you're doing a recovery diet, you need a lot more nutrition, and you need those juices really to make it work well. So you lose some of those enzymes in the pulp in the juicer. But if you need to make juice, don't use a blender. Right? They're lousy juices. They really are. If you want to make juice, use a juicer. If you want to make a smoothie, use a blender. But don't be afraid of putting stuff in your blender and thinking, well, it's kind of compromised. No, you're actually releasing the enzymes, and you're going to get great benefit out of those smoothies. It's not destroying the enzymes. Overall, you're going to get more enzyme activity out of the stuff you put in your blender than through your juicer. It's just there's more fiber there to deal with. So you need a stronger, healthier digestive system to work with all that. So, would you blend your kale, or would you juice it? I'll just let you pick. Based on what I just told you here, what would you do with your kale? Yeah, think about that a little bit. In Costco here, where we live, there's a lot of interest in organic foods, and you can buy bags of baby kale now. And that's pretty good stuff. You can get that at restaurant supply stores as well. You know, kale that's ready to eat. So you can, you know, it's very convenient now. So it's easy to find. It's very accessible now. So you might put it in your smoothies. Somebody say, well, juice it. If you're going to have a lot of it, you might want to just put it in your juice there too. Somebody say, well, some of both. Got a lot of kale. It's good stuff. I'll share some stuff a little bit later on, the enzymatic activity in kale. Give you an idea of why you maybe ought to eat more kale and juice more kale. So, you know, if you want a lot of it and you want to consume that whole bag every week, you may want to put some of that into your green juice. You know, add some lemon for flavor and stuff. So that's some of the results there with the blenders versus juicers there. There's one more category of things to talk about here. Now, maybe you're on overload already, can't handle too much more, but there's a bit more. And you can go back to the website later and see this. You can review this webinar, and you can go look at the data on the Raw Food Lab website as well. So there's a fairly new kind of juice on the market here. It's made by processing at very, very high pressures. Okay, if you took a juice and put a bottle of juice, put it on the bottom of the deepest part of the ocean, you would be about a fifth of the way there to the kind of pressure that they put into these. And it doesn't squish the jar because it's simultaneously put on all sides of it. So you put the juice in the bottle that's going to be on the shelf, and it goes into the system, and it has a huge pressure for a short time. And it kills the bacteria. It really does pasteurize it. I think the stuff has a good shelf life on it. And you don't lose flavor, and you really don't lose much nutrition as well. But there's a question. Does it change the enzyme content? Are these juices enzymatically active? Because I can buy a flash pasteurized juice on the shelf, and they're all over the place now. And they're dead. They don't have enzymatic activity. Flash pasteurization is just a fast way of killing your juice. And the enzymes are dead in those. How about these? So there's several different ones you can find. You can find the Suja juice. You may have known some that I haven't included here because these aren't exclusive by any means, but they're representative of what's on the market. So Suja juice, Evolution Fresh, you can find those in Starbucks. There's a Safeway chain of grocery stores. You can find those there. Project Juice, Cooler Cleanses, you can order those online. This Cooler Cleanse is claimed to be not high pressure processed. So that's a good comparison there too. It's a bottle of juice, they ship it to you fresh. And you drink it pretty quick. Okay, some of these other ones, they can sit on the shelf for a couple weeks, I believe, before they're bad. So here's the results. In the same kind of testing that we've done with the other products here. Same 6 enzymes here. Now, the reason to do these enzymes is because they're markers. they're not like these are the most important enzymes in there, but they're the kind of enzymes that no one's going to cheat the study on, okay? Because no one adds these kinds of enzymes into the product because they're not digestive enzymes. But they're markers here. And as you kill these marker enzymes, all the other enzymes go away too. And when I use all 6 of them across here, you get a pretty consistent idea of which products really have enzyme activity. So it balances out in case one's high in one and low in another one. Okay, there's 3 fresh juices. There's one here, and the fresh carrot juice here, and this green juice down here. Those are comparison ones with the other ones here. These are fresh juices made in a home juicer here that I made. So again, the bold-faced ones are the highest ones, and then we do a ranking of those compared to those highest ones there. Again, here's the fresh one here, another fresh one. Where's mine? There's trying to get my arrow here, and there's that goes away. Okay, and there's another one down here. You compare those, rank those. There's no evidence here exactly that the enzymes have been lost. They do have enzyme activity. Some of them are pretty good. This Dr. Green's across here. You know, a couple enzymes, it doesn't have that one. And we're at 1.6% there. Not much in there. But that may vary with the different kinds of produce that's in there as well. Okay, some produce has more enzymes than others. So depending on the mix that's in there, it may have more or less. These home ones actually do pretty well. See, in the top 10, they're all up there. The cooler cleanse ones that aren't processed by high pressure processing, they're up here too. Those 2 there. Here's the other one here, the cooler cleanse one. Those ones there, they're all in the 3. That's 6 out of the top 10 there that are up there. The other ones, there's other ones up there too. But those ones tend to be up pretty high. So there's no evidence that they have destroyed them completely. When I measure flash pasteurized juice, it doesn't have any enzyme activity. There's just nothing there at all. These ones do have enzyme activity. I haven't been able to compare directly those that are made, you know, before they went into the machine and those after. Maybe someday I'll get to do some of that, but I haven't gotten that opportunity yet. There's some foods, some juices you make at home that, you know, they might just be better vegetables. They may be fresher. One reason or another, they might be better here. You know, I'm not quite sure why some of those had better ranking if we look back one slide. Why these ones had better ranking than some of these other ones. But it could be that the vegetables that I picked, you know, carrots and kale, they just have more enzymes than some of these other things. So if I look, here's a comparison, here's made in a Vitamix here. If I compare the enzyme content just per unit of volume of the juice coming from carrots, apples, orange, and kale here. Okay, not everything's equal here. If I look at acid phosphatase, I get quite a range from 300 up to 20,000 units per liter. A wide range here, okay? And the Vitamix did a really good job extracting those enzymes. So that's a pretty clear picture here. I think there's what 7 or 8 times as much enzymes in the kale as in the carrot. And, you know, that's another 3 times as much going from apple to carrot. So there's quite a bit of variation here. You know, the kale numbers are monsters compared to the other ones. Okay, if you look in the juicer made with this new wave NutriMaster juicer, the differences are pretty stark. If you look across here, you know, they're not as amazing as seen in the other one, but kale just has more enzyme activity in it. So to me, that would indicate that that's a good vegetable to get more of. Okay, find a way to get more kale into your diet because it has more robustness to it. It has more enzymes. It has more nutrition of other sorts too. But just on an enzymatic activity level, there's a lot going for kale there. Okay, so that's really the results here. Let's summarize this a little bit before we go way too long. Leave a little time for questions here. The living bodies that we live in here, they're made of living cells, and they require living foods to thrive. And not all these raw foods, not all these green powders that we thought were raw are raw. Barley Max is really among the very best. You know, there's one number that was lower on some of those things. If you fix that one number, that's about 9% back to what the other ones are. It's really on the top there. All right, pasteurized almonds are still raw. Raw almond butter in the jar is heated. It's pasteurized. No activity in that. Blenders are good. They don't destroy the enzymes. And the high-pressure processed juices are still fresh juice. All right, you want to go back to the website here, myhdiet.com/rawfoodlab, and get more information there and more future results here. If you like this kind of testing, you want to keep track of this because there will be more. And this sheds light on some of these things that you're not finding anyplace else. This is a one-of-a-kind testing that we're doing here. So that's what I have for results here, Paul. People may have a few questions on this, and we'll just take some of those at this time.
That sounds great. Well, thank you, Michael, for all the great information and the research. And, you know, that are pasteurized almonds raw, or what about the HPP? Those are questions I know I've had myself, so it's really neat to have answers for that. A couple good questions here that we can get to.
Okay.
Pamela asked, even if enzymes are low in a given juice, will there still be nutrients that the body will use?
There would be, because some vegetables don't have as much enzyme in them. They may be more watery, things like cucumbers, celery, but there's a lot of good minerals still in those, especially if they're organically grown, or if they're well grown in a nutrient-rich environment, then they will be still beneficial there. It's just you can't really compare, carrots to kale directly because they're different. They have different makeups.
But if the enzymes have been killed through the processing, would there still be nutrients utilized, or are the nutrients negatively impacted as well?
So you're asking whether enzymes that were there when it was a true living food, and it was lost its enzymes through processing. That's a different story. A cooked carrot is better than no carrot, but it's not the same as a living carrot. There's still benefits. There's still some vitamins in there. There's still minerals, but you're not going to recover health eating these cooked carrots the way you would with a raw carrot juice. So there's some benefits to it, and there's benefits to eating some cooked vegetables. You can eat way more of it, in a sense, and there's benefits to the minerals in there. But it doesn't have the vitality that we need. It doesn't replace the raw living foods.
That makes sense. The kale that you used for the testing on enzymes, was that Costco kale, or was it fresh kale from a farmer's market?
It came in a big bag from a restaurant supply store. So I think grown in California probably. Being up in Washington State, I don't think it came from the East Coast. It probably just came straight up.
Okay. And
it wasn't organic kale. It was just kale.
Okay. And consuming raw kale and juice, does it have a negative effect on the thyroid? Are you aware of that at all?
For the most part, if you're taking any kind of iodine supplement, it's going to negate that part of the goitrogens that would exist in the cruciferous vegetables. That really only has an effect if you're not getting any iodine from anywhere else. If you're really super low on iodine, then it might be a problem.
Okay.
But otherwise, I think you're going to be okay with that. It's not going to have an effect.
And somebody asked, what about the almonds that you grind right in the store? Would they have enzymes? I guess like making almond butter.
Unless they're toasted almonds. If they've been roasted, definitely not. But if they call themselves raw almonds, then yeah, even if they've been pasteurized, because that pasteurization process for an almond isn't that harsh. It's a steam process, but it's meant to kill surface pathogens. You take those almonds and they'll still sprout. So it's really a surface treatment that they've had. So yeah, you can make raw almonds, get raw almonds to work with.
That makes sense. That's good.
But it's not going to keep like the almond butter that you buy in a jar. There's a reason for that.
Right. It'll go rancid faster, won't it?
Much faster, yeah, because now you have a raw food. So you kind of make it as you need it.
If you get more enzymes from blending, why would you juice?
Well, some people might ask that question, but you get benefits from juice that you're not going to get from your blender. You get a different combination of vegetables. You can consume more vegetables. And when you're low on energy, you're very sick, very tired, the juice is going to be much easier on you for recovery than something in a blender with all the fiber in it. So there's benefits to the juices that you just, the volume and the quantity, you just can't compare the juice to the blender.
Yeah, and the nutrition will get to the cells a lot faster with the juice as well, right?
Yeah, you'll get better absorption in some ways. And if you're trying to make a vegetable juice, you just can't do it with a blender. It doesn't work. You have to dilute the stuff to blend it in there in one form or another. Even if you juice just straight oranges. I mean, I don't know if you've done that before. Have you tried that, Paul? Just blending an orange and trying to drink it?
I have not.
No, it's not very good. It's just not. Because in doing some of this tests, we had some of this leftover stuff, so I tried it. Oh, man, it's not good.
Wow.
If you want to make juice, use a juicer. I mean, it just makes sense. The blender will blend stuff, but to get the volume that you want from fresh vegetable juice, you just can't do it with a blender.
Okay.
In spite of all that they claim that they can do. I mean, they're still blenders.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one in particular that claims it's a juicer, but it creates more confusion. So
yeah, and I tested that one, and it's still a blender.
It's still a blender. It doesn't remove the fiber.
It does not. Anything that doesn't remove the fiber is still a blender.
Mm-hmm. Did you do any testing on the Ninja in your testing?
I did. It's one of the blenders in there. So it does some extraction, but I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say too much about it.
Okay. Somebody did ask about it.
Really, if you have one, I'm sorry. If you're thinking of buying one, please don't. Buy a real blender. It's a marketing gimmick. They have like the highest return rates of almost any appliance out there for kitchen appliances. So buy a real blender.
If you soak your raw almonds overnight, does that impact the enzymes in any way?
I haven't tested a lot of that directly. It's going to make some of the minerals more absorbable. I think that's one of the key benefits, and some vitamins will start to be produced that weren't there before. So it changes the profile of the rest of the nutrition. There's some enzymes that will become activated.
Okay. Did you notice any difference in time between the time the vegetable is picked and actually used? Do the enzymes degrade at all?
That's a good question there. And I think by the time you get wilted, worn out produce, the answer would be, yeah, it's pretty dead. But I haven't done testing, like straight out of the garden, 2 days later, a week later, things like that.
That would be an interesting
Some
test.
things are pretty stable. You take a carrot, and it's very stable. Take a beet, in the right conditions, it stores really well. Cabbage, stores great. Leaf lettuce, keep it right, keep it crisp. In the right environment, it's going to do pretty well. But once you let it wilt, I think it's done.
Yeah, I was wondering about that kale you got from the restaurant supply. If it had been fresh out of the garden, would those enzymes even have been higher?
Maybe. I'm just surprised. I had to dilute that stuff way more than anything else. It was just like, tenfold dilution more than anything else to get it, to fit in the range, because it would turn yellow so fast. It was in a class all by itself.
Mm-hmm. We had a lot of questions and a lot of participation. We sure appreciate all the questions. I've got one last one, I think, here that how long can a powder in a jar be kept safely?
If you keep it in your freezer or someplace cold, probably 5 years, maybe more. I don't know. Just at room temperature, it depends on your room. If it gets really hot, up to 100 degrees in there, you're not going to get 2 year shelf life out of that powder. But you keep it at room temperature, around 70, 75 degrees, it's got probably a 2 year shelf life, and there's still good stuff. You remember, Paul, when we started looking at different barley max kind of products, barley juice grass powders, We had some old stuff that was just kind of under the desk in a box, and it had been sitting there a while. And it was still better than a lot of other stuff on the market at that point. And it wasn't well kept at all.
No, it was just in a Ziploc bag. So it had been sitting there for 6 to 8 months probably at least before we even started testing it.
And it was good stuff.
Yes.
So the main thing is the way it's processed in the beginning. Once you get good product there that has the enzymes intact, you keep it cool, keep it dry, keep it out of the sunlight. 2 years easy.
It's great. Well, thank you, Dr. Donaldson, for all the great information and really neat research. It's almost state-of-the-art research that you've put together for us, and it's good to know the answers to some of these questions. Before we get going, though, I'd like to announce our winners for this evening. For a 2-month supply of Barley Max, we have Connie Havens, Jack Rafferty, and Sandy Smith. And we appreciate everybody jumping on the call with us this evening. Thank you again, Dr. Donaldson, for being with us and for all the great information that you presented.
You're very welcome. Just go back to that website, the Raw Food Lab, and you can go back and see all the results if you didn't get them all tonight. And share it with your friends. I mean, you're going to change some people's perspectives here on almonds and raw foods pretty quick.
Absolutely. And we look forward to joining us next month when we have another great webinar. Be looking in your email box for those updates. And until then, we pray that you'll stay healthy and that the Lord blesses you mightily. Have a great evening.